Finding the inverse of a matrix. To find the inverse of a matrix, we need to follow the steps used with the Gauss-Jordan elimination method, or technology. Now, I highly recommend technology. I will go through the steps as if I were to do this by hand, so you have an idea as the process. All right, the steps are adjoin A and an identity matrix into an augmented matrix. So this letter I stands for identity matrix. So we're going to take a matrix that we're starting with called A, augment it with an identity matrix, and place it all in one matrix. And you'll see that I'm starting off in the example with a matrix that's 2 by 2. I'm going to place that matrix right into the left-hand side of an augmented matrix. And on the right side, I have my identity matrix. Okay, step 2, reduce that matrix I just created to the form where the identity matrix ends up being on the left, and that will create the inverse matrix over on the right, if possible. Now remember, not every matrix is an inverse, and you can only find inverse matrices for square matrices, and even then not every square matrix has an inverse. So a matrix that does not have an inverse is called a singular matrix. Let's go down to the process of actually finding the inverse matrix. So I start with my original matrix A and my identity matrix, and I want to take the 4, 3, 2, 6 and eventually transform it so the left-hand side is the identity matrix. I've already worked this out, and the very first thing I did is I took row 2, I multiplied it by -2, and I added it to row 1. So I did that arithmetic in my head. And I'm taking all of row 2, multiplying it by -2, and then adding row 1. So 2 times -2 is -4, and I add it to 4, I get 0, which is going to go back in that row 2. I repeat that again for every single term. So 6 times -2 is 12, plus 3 is -9. 0 times -2 is 0. Plus 1 is 1. -2 times 1 is -2, plus 0 is -2. All right, so what I've accomplished so far is in that identity matrix that I'm trying to create, I've placed a 0 in that second row, first column. Then I'm going to take 3 times row 1 and add row 2 to it. Now, the result is that my row 2 is staying the same, and I'm placing this arithmetic up in row 1. So now row 1 has a 0 in that second column. Getting closer to the identity matrix, I have my zeros, and now I need to change the 12 to a 1 and the -9 to a 1. All right, to change the 12 to a 1, I'm going to divide in all of row 1 by 12. And when I do that, I end up with 1, 0, 1/3, and -1/6. And then I'm going to take the second row and divide it all by a -9. So that way this becomes a +1. If I divide everything by -9, that second row turns into 1, -1/9, and 2/9. So my inverse matrix is sitting here on the right-hand side. That's my inverse matrix because I ended up with an identity matrix there on the left of the augmented line. With technology, we can also type in our original matrix, which was 4, 3, 2, and 6. I can tell it to find an inverse. Now the way to do that is either click the button find an inverse, or down below you can type A, because we're working with matrix A, and tell it that you want the power of -1, which is an inverse matrix. Now I'm on a slow network today, so let's see if it will process quickly. It did. So we can confirm with technology that the inverse matrix I have on my document is correct. Please use technology as much as you're comfortable with. It will speed the process up.